Leon Davis.
Here.
Craig Bowman.
Here.
David Randolph.
Here.
Carol Minden.
Here. May I hear a request to approve the minutes from May 21st of 2020?
So moved. I'll second. No problem.
I did not catch a second.
David Rand.
Okay.
I'll second if someone else made the motion first, I think. This is David Randolph.
Travis Fulkerson.
Yes.
Scott West. Scott West.
Yes.
Leon Davis.
Yes.
Craig Bowman.
Yes.
David Randolph.
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. First item on the agenda is ARC 20-487, a request by Josh Mcfarland for approval of new materials, signage, and landscaping for the Melody Lane Center. Its general location is 716 West Main Street. Marcia, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, staff, and Planning Commission. This item is brought to you. It's already been reviewed by the Architectural Review Committee. We are required through our code to take items within specific and special districts as designated by the code to the appearance, I think I said architectural, to the Appearance Review Committee. So this is, you may be familiar with it. It's on the south side of Main Street, and basically it's an old strip shopping center. And Mr. Josh Mcfarland, I believe, is on the line. Let me confirm that. Mr. Farland, are you available? He may not be online. So anyway, with that being said, this is an area of town that is definitely needing some revitalization. Mr. Mcfarland has purchased this property and has already started the renovations. During the process, it was just as COVID started, there was some miscommunication about the status of the city and applications, but he's been more than happy to work with the city. You may also be familiar with this site as where Turning Point Soccer has been located. With that being said, Mr. Mcfarland does plan a professional retrofit of this one-time shopping strip center. It kind of, at this point, most of the uses within it are going to be, it appears, if everything works out for Mr. Mcfarland and the other investors, it appears that it'll kind of have an athletic theme, kind of continue along the lines that they've already been working. I want to point out that this is also the site where Josh's snow cone is located. At this point, Josh's does not intend to leave that particular facility. It's located over towards the levee, and they are working with Mr. Mcfarland to get a drive-through. So if there are any, Mr. Mcfarland has a really great vision for this area. In the end, he would like to see a restaurant type use and maybe some outdoor activities that will require additional zoning, probably a planned unit development that is not necessarily on the table this evening. So the Corridor Appearance District as created is defined by Appendix A in the Jenks Comprehensive Plan. And when we look through this, we look for compliance methods including landscaping, building material selection, structural design, and color scheme provisions, sound reduction methods, improved air quality, and provide attractive sites for non-residential commercial development and industrial development. So that's straight out of the code. The Appearance Review Committee met May 26, 2020. And if you're looking at your packet, I apologize, I didn't print the version with the page numbers, so this would be page 2 of my staff report. It shows the members that were present, the members that were absent but sent in their comments, and the non-voting attending members or non-voting attendees. So recommendation by the Appearance Review Committee for Melody Lane site plan was supported with the following comments. Signage must comply with the city code, including lumens, message board, etc. Parking and paving is in a terrible condition. The repaving will be a big improvement and should meet the code. Provide detailed landscape plan for staff approval, which would include additional trees needed along Main Street and meet or exceed the landscape design guidelines provided by staff. Appearance review committee meetings are not advertised. There was no public comment outside of Councilor Lynn, and this is within her district or her ward. These properties within any special district have special factors for consideration. Kind of already went over that. My recommendation agrees with what the Appearance Review Committee stated, but I will add one thing. When you're looking at, and I'm going to point it out to you, if you look at page 4 of the staff report, it kind of shows existing conditions. And then page 5 shows the little Josh's snow cone. Page 6 shows the current site plan as they presented it. We have asked for more trees than what they're showing here. And then the last page of the staff report shows kind of a 3D elevation of the site. And I just want to point out they have submitted for a sign on that building. It's called the Armory, Sports Armory. It looks very, very similar to what you see here in the sense that it is channel set lettering that are plastic and metal set in white. So we don't believe that there's any significant impact with that elevation or with that sign on that elevation. So staff does recommend approval per the Appearance Review Committee recommendations. Do you have any questions?
Do the commissioners have any questions of this article?
The only question that I have, and this is John Brown, by the way, I did make it in. My apologies to the commission and the community for some login challenges. With this change, I realize this is an ARC change. With the development that's happening at Melody Lane, will this have any impact on the previous concessions that we made or worked upon for the church that dealt with the parking on the south end?
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. That is a good question. I was not familiar with that. This week that did come up at City Council, and it is my understanding that Mr. Mcfarland is the general contractor for the church, works very closely with them, and nothing will interfere with their expansion and his relationship with them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? And I take it the Josh Mcfarland is not online with us, is that correct?
Josh, are you available online? I think you are correct. He is not available.
Okay, and there's no email questions from the public, right?
No, there are not.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve. This is John.
Second, Craig Bowman.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Menden.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is ARC 20-488, request by Tidal Wave Carwash for approval of a new LED monument sign at 408 South Elm. Marcy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Planning Commission, and staff. This item is brought to you as a monument sign request. They're asking for approval of the actual sign and an LED display. In the process of coordinating with this applicant, we have asked them to provide additional landscaping on that site. It was part of an older PUD, PUD 67. The underlying zoning is commercial shopping. If you're going through your packet, on page 2 of the staff report, it says recommendation by Appearance Review Committee. The item was supported with comments as seen below. Approved sign location matching the lineup of other signs along Elm and meet all the city sign code requirements. And then they did vote, as you can see, on their preferences, which I believe sign number 1, which we liked, is also the sign that was chosen by the owner of that project. The owner, I spoke with the sign person and received an email from the owner. They're very willing to add additional landscaping. I will say there was at least five trees on the site when they began their development, and they did add significant landscaping in a couple of places. There will be additional landscaping with the around the monument sign and some other things. That will come back for staff approval if you agree this evening. So with that being said, staff does recommend approval for the new monument sign per ARC and staff comments, providing a detailed site plan for internal review and approval of landscape standards provided to the applicant. So if you continue looking on page 3, it kind of just shows you the layout. This site is just a little bit north, and on the west side of Elm, it's north of Research in that area. I included on page 4 all the LED sign requirements. Wanted you all to know what they were, but I also wanted the applicant to understand the standards that they would have to meet. And then we were talking about the vote that took place. That's on the next page there, and then we have the location and then the actual landscape standards. Do you have any questions for staff?
I've got one question.
Okay.
I really appreciate you putting the landscape standards in. I think that's a step up for the city from the little that we had before, and that's been in process too for several months. Are these standards consistent with what we're doing elsewhere?
Do you mean by on other projects around the city?
That's right. Yeah.
We are, as a staff, I'm working very closely with the engineering department and the building inspections department, and we're following up and coordinating together to make sure that these building permits come in, and if we find that they are in these special districts and they do not conform to these standards, we're handing these standards out and asking them to bring their lot up to, not really code, but definitely improve it per the landscape requirements.
Okay, and I understand these were modeled from the city of Tulsa too, so those seem to work well. You know, which trees, aren't allowed and that sort of thing. Okay. Okay,
Trees that
thank
are
you.
more inclined to live.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has the applicant agreed to go with sign number 1?
That is my understanding. I believe they finalized the selection, and it is sign number 1.
By chance, does it have movement like what I saw on the screen a little while ago? It looked like 3 was like flashing and everything. Does this tidal wave car wash sign have movement to it, or is it just going to be the LED part of it?
I really should be able to answer that. I gave them you are allowed to have some movement, but the code requires it to be like every 30 seconds, and I think that's in here on the page. Page 4, it kind of tells you that it says shall comply with the following criteria. Streaming video and audio are prohibited except during times when a special event permit has been issued. Each message must be displayed a minimum of 8 seconds. Change of message must be accomplished in 2 seconds. Change of message must occur simultaneously on entire sign. No flashing, dimming, or brightening except to accommodate a message change. So it continues to go through the different requirements. And are you asking if that sign blinks on and off?
I'm actually asking, does the tidal wave car wash, that part of it?
I just saw that when I looked up. No, I don't think so. I think that's...
Okay, because that's what made me think about it, because I didn't expect it. I expected only the LED section to be movable, and then when that sign on the screen was flashing, I was like, well, wait a minute here. We don't want double flashing.
No,
Okay.
That's funny. I never have even seen that. I think that's just the PDF trying to populate its content.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I assume we have no comments from the public.
There are no comments at this time.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
This is Scott. I'll make a motion to approve this item.
This is David, second.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is ARC 20-489, request by Maggie's Place for approval of materials in an outdoor mural. This will be at 201 East Main Street. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Planning Commission, and staff. This is a kind of a special project. It's not in full swing yet, if you want to use that phrase. They consider themselves, I'll probably have to read it. Basically, let me just say this. They're located in the Special Theme District, so that's on our main street. And it's located really what I consider in the heart of the downtown. The building was constructed in 1930. The exterior has many of the original features, including tan brick and light colored cut stone. They're looking to be in operation as soon as possible. They are considered a music venue/bar, and their primary goal seems to be bringing music and artists and audiences together under one roof and/or weather permitting under the stars, and of course during COVID, however they might possibly be able to do that and function. So they got a lot of challenges ahead of them. So this evening, what we have been looking at as a staff and as the Appearance Review Committee, and on page 1, it starts talking about the theme and the guidelines for the district. So a lot of this, when you read, the criteria are designed to be flexible in nature, but provide a cohesive theme for the defined special district. Architectural designs that are typical of the turn of the century are the theme for the special district. The overall appearance of structures within the defined district should adhere to the main theme as described below. Conformance to the historic turn-of-the-century architectural design theme, especially Victorian or Western, shall be required. And then it says something about turn-of-the-century plus 14 years or minus 14 years. This building was built in 1930, so from the get-go, it doesn't really meet that rigid standard. And we are not talking about the actual architectural appearance this evening of the structure, because they are not changing the structure. The only thing that they are changing are the awnings and doing a mural in the back, or requesting a mural in the back, and they are doing kind of outdoor patio seating, etc. So on page 2 it says, consider. Is the proposed art flexible enough to be considered compatible with the vision of the downtown and special theme district? Is the outdoor space compatible with the surrounding area? Do you have any concerns about signage or lighting? And what is not for consideration is the actual architectural style of the exterior, because it is not receiving a significant change in character and was built in 1930. Again, I kind of introduced the Appearance Review Committee. And if you look on page 3 in the middle of the page, this is the recommendation. The voting members made a motion of support with comments as seen below. Number 1, no corrugated metal can be used on the corner and front along Main Street. So there was an original photo that showed the corner having a corrugated metal awning, and I agree 100% that is not appropriate for our Main Street, or even on that corner entrance. The mural, confirm art is tastefully done as possible, agree to maintenance and general upkeep of the mural. They asked for a legal opinion on the mural art and signage. So the question is whether or not a mural is allowed, because even with signage, murals are similar. When it comes to content, there's very little regulation that you can do as a city. On the actual sign on the corner, signage they recommended could include bulbs within that arrow, but nothing flashing. So Thank you, Carrie, for scrolling through my staff report. I appreciate that. Basically, when you get to page 4, I have reiterated what was already stated. Staff does recommend conditional approval pending conditions as previously listed. If you'll keep going, Carrie, these are just different views of the main street and some in that area. Currently, there's black fabric awnings there on that corner and above the windows. You can go to the next one. Go to page 7 would be great. Thank you. You can keep going. Okay, so you can stop there. These are 3 of the views. You can't hardly see it unless Carrie zooms back in, but the first one is kind of a really wide screen, and it shows the mural. And I did find out through Brandon today, after speaking with the applicant, that the mural is just basically the artist went with the concepts that they were given and did a very rough draft, so to speak. So as you can see, it has an underwater music theme. So the good news is everyone there is wearing 1900s dive gear. So there's that. The other thing that you'll see to the right for me is the outdoor. So there's some signage where they've written on the wall, and some of that's very similar to what they actually found from the original building on the inside. And then on the very corner, it's considered, I believe you call it a key sign. And that's where they said no flashing lights or flashing bulbs, but the Appearance Review Committee was comfortable with the yellow lights, and if those were bulbs, they were comfortable with that. So you can go to the next one. On the next page, it kind of shows you, they had already started some of this construction, and they've got a screened area there with a transparent fence, and that wall that, as I'm looking at it, is on my left, is where they would want the mural to be done. That window is where they would serve alcohol, or at least where a waiter or waitress would pick up the beverages and bring them out to customers sitting under the stars and under the lights. It does have the corrugated metal. I felt like, and the Appearance Review Committee felt like it was okay in the back as the little shed roof there. You can keep going, Carrie. And then this is a little bit of a stage with just a wood screening wall and some tables and more like a deck patio. They do want to be a music venue. They would certainly need to talk about their hours of operation, which I don't believe that was submitted. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So when you're looking at that view, you see the little grassy area. All of that is currently there. And the only thing they're really waiting on is approval to do a mural.
Okay. Questions? Any commissioners have any questions on this agenda item?
Questions or comments?
Go ahead, either one.
Okay, so here's the thing. I like the idea of dressing the district up and the idea of utilizing this property in the manner that has been proposed. Challenge that I've got is there's been some other projects similar to this. You may recall that Oklahoma City had some conflict over some mural projects several years ago. If we look back to the city of Tulsa with the penguins, there were issues on the penguin project was raising funds for the zoo, and the placement and design of some of the penguins actually presented challenges in some of the districts similar to what we're proposing. I agree with what's been noted about the corrugated metal and the concerns that were presented by the Appearance Review Committee. The one, and actually I do agree that the mural falls within the scope of what we have the ability to address. Here's where it gets subjective. If I look at what other projects we've done with appearance review in the themed district, the appearance of the presented design seems more eclectic and more for an arts type of district versus the theme district. And I don't think it's consistent with other things that we've done that meet the turn of the century or the Victorian appearance. So, you know, from a standpoint of the actual design concepts that were given, I'm just throwing this out. If I were making suggestions, if they were wanting to do a mural, there's a lot of good photographs and images of early Jenks that they could actually do a mural on the side of that building that would give an appearance of what Jenks looked like back in the early days, that would then be more consistent with the theme district and not give such an eclectic appearance. The other concern, I know that the ARC addressed the maintenance issue. That is a west-facing wall, and those are bricks. So the bricks are much older, so there's going to be some challenges with maintenance and upkeep on that because it's catching afternoon sun. So again, the question about upkeep and maintenance, we don't want to have this up and then have it peeling off a year later. So I've got some challenges. Primary challenges, I don't believe that the design that's been proposed in the concept is consistent with other things that we've done in the theme district.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Kevin Smith at Maggie's. I didn't realize it started at 6. I thought it started at 7.
Okay, so Kevin, you're the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, and we're at the point where the commissioners are making comments or asking questions, and at which time they're done with that, I'll turn it over to you, okay?
Sure.
Okay, anyone else besides John want to question or make comments?
I'll just weigh in. I think it looks attractive for sure, and this seems like something that could benefit Jenks. I know there's been some discussion with the new comprehensive plan that is just around the corner about changing this district and would we expand beyond just turn of the century. I realize this is in place now, but there are other buildings, not so much murals, that probably don't fit that in my mind. Maybe this one's not exactly an exact fit, but there are others that aren't either. So I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission and maybe the applicant too, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
And if I may, Carol, I want to follow up on it because I agree. I have long had concern as we're going down this road of the new comprehensive plan and potentially changing the game in as few as 3 or 4 or 5 months for applicants. And if something gets submitted in 3 or 4 months, it may fit. It no longer require these types of guidelines. And so I think that's something we have to at least take into consideration, even though we have the current theme district applicant. And in looking at the front elevation of that building, I think it's just 2 doors down. It's the business that has the frogs on the front, if I remember correctly.
Leaf frogs, yes.
Yeah, and so.
Hello?
Travis? Did we lose him?
Am I back?
There you
Yes.
go. Go ahead.
Yeah, just appeared there for a second. Sorry, but that's all I had. I think that like David, there's enough difference in that district. I mean, a block away and across the street's KFC. So it's hard for me over this mural to consider the application inappropriate. My thoughts.
Anyone else?
Do you guys want to hear from me, the applicant?
There's kind of somewhat of a hesitation because we're on video, so I have to give it a few seconds to make sure that everyone speaks if they want to speak.
Sure.
I'll add my 2 cents in the sense that on Main Street, the front of the building is fine. I'm not personally fond of the mural. I kind of like the idea of what John said about having something more of what the Jenks town front kind of looked like before. I don't understand what the concept of water on Main Street is. It's nowhere near where the aquarium is, but I think that it's nice and it looks like it's going to be a great idea, and it's nice to have an outdoor seating area. And although I think the bar kind of like something you see in Key West, but that's kind of how I just feel. I'm just not crazy about the mural, but I think something on the side of the building will certainly make it look better. And if no one else has anything, I'll turn it over I'll let the applicant respond. If you can give us your name and address.
Mm-hmm. Kevin Smith, and you want my home address or the address here? Or? Okay,
Either.
home address is 18. Sorry.
Either one is fine.
Okay, we're at 201 East Main Street. Obviously here on Main Street in Jenks. My wife and I own Soul City on 11th Street, 11th and Utica. We actually started at 3rd and Lansing downtown, and then moved to 11th and Utica in 2013, and we're there until last October. Rick Husky from Husky Chiropractic is our partner in this. He actually bought the building from Dwayne Phillips last summer and approached us about doing a music venue / bar at that time, and that's why we still have Soul City. Our desire is to, have a really cool place in Jenks for people to come enjoy live music. We really hang our hat on Tulsa original music, not so much cover bands and DJs and things like that. It's singer-songwriter. We really have a passion for that side of things. And our whole design, I know you guys are talking about the mural, and while we love Jenks and we love the history of Jenks, my wife, Amy, graduated from here in 1985, so this is like homecoming for her. And of course has her Cajun Blackbird building, her store around the corner with Pink Lily, which has been great. We really love the kind of island theme. It's a rum bar, and we are just trying to bring something that's different and not the same thing to Jenks. And I told Brandon, I think, yesterday that, the design that is on there, our son is the mural artist. He's done tons of murals, including the BOK Center and other ones downtown, pretty extensive work. And he is a top-notch artist. So whatever goes on that wall is going to be amazing. It's not going to be just a run-of-the-mill mural. And we had at Soul City, we had a mural of J.J. Cale, Tulsa songwriter and legend, on the side of that building. And as far as, I think I kind of come in when someone was talking about the upkeep a year from now, that's on us. We want that thing to look amazing year in and year out. And for it to be an attraction, not just for us, but for Jenks, and for people to come from all over, to sit on that patio and to listen to music and enjoy that atmosphere. And, we just don't have a desire to do something that's just, the same thing.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
And also on that design, that was just a sketch that I had him put together so you guys could kind of see coloring and, all that. So it's going to be a teal-based, obviously kind of aquatic-looking, fun mural. And it's right here by the school. The kids will love it. So.
Okay, anything else, Kevin?
That's it. I wish my wife was here because I thought they started at 7, so she's trying to make her way down here from her work. So.
Okay, thank you. I take it we don't have any comments from the public, Marcel?
There are no comments.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
I've just got a brief comment. Just to point out for everyone, I think it's obvious, but the mural is not visible from Main Street. It's just 2nd Street on the west there. So
Right.
To the extent that impacts what's visible from Main Street, I think we should consider that.
Right, you're right.
Just also to point out, I've traveled over the last couple of years in other large cities like downtown Denver and San Francisco and did some bike tours, and they have some amazing murals around, and also downtown Tulsa. I think it does add some character when done right. So I'm not in the anti-mural camp, but I realize there's other legalities that may have to be looked at here.
Okay,
I'm
any other
Yeah,
questions?
Wayne, just one more comment, Carol, and I agree with both Commissioner Randolph and Fulkerson on their comments. The fact that, again, the ARC and the standards have been very subjective for a long time, and the fact that we are looking at the new comp plan and not knowing what will come out of the theme district. My biggest concern is, since I've been on this particular commission, we've tried to be very consistent, and there's been, a number of other applicants that have been in the theme district that we've addressed challenges and tried to stay consistent. And I agree with the Peace Frogs. That's I'm not sure how that design ever got approved in the theme district. It doesn't fit, hasn't fit for a long time, but not a criticism on the business. It's just the fact that in the past somebody wasn't consistent with the standards. So it's I just hate to have a double standard on what we've done over the past several years.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, do I hear a motion?
I will move to approve ARC 20-489.
And Travis Fulkerson, I'll second.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
No.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman, Bowman,
Yeah.
yeah, I heard that thing. David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is JZ 20-656 PUD 16 amendment, request by Wallace Engineering for a major amendment to PUD 16 to allow for a child care facility. This would be at the southeast corner of Elm and 121st Street. Okay. Marcia, are you still with us?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, Planning Commission. I was trying to get clarification since this is a public / online forum tonight. And I have not been in one of our sessions in City Hall. So I wanted to clarify if someone wanted to speak. I'm not sure if anyone is here, so I'm going to turn around and ask before I start my presentation if anyone is here to
Okay.
speak on this item. Was anyone
I apologize.
here specifically to speak on this item this evening? Okay, thank you. Okay, so when the time comes, we do have one citizen who would like to speak.
Madam Chair, this is Jim Beach with Wallace Engineering. I'm here for this item.
Thank you
Thank
Mr.
you,
Beach.
Beach.
And I will say, Mr. Beach, I don't know if you received my email or if you were present when the chairman read the guidelines. And when you give your presentation, you will be limited to around 10 minutes. And Brandon, I believe, is running that clock, and he'll let you know when you get close to that. So with that being said, this parcel is part of PUD 16. The general location is the southeast corner of Elm and 121st Street. I think most of you are familiar that there is a Casey's on that southeast hard corner. Once, if this is approved, there would be a vacant lot, and then this would be adjacent to the neighborhood to the east. So the final plat for this area was filed as Yorktown Village, and I'm going to turn to page 2 of the actual staff report. Currently, PUD 16, this is a major amendment request. That's why there was a 300-foot radius notice. So everyone within 300 feet of this property received a public notice. There should have been a sign up as well. So what the applicant is requesting is to allow for use unit 5, but specifically for a children's nursery as previously approved use. To add that to the list of previously approved uses. Sorry about that. So this particular site would be 1.13 acres. The floor area 10,000 square feet. They are going to supply 35 parking spaces. The code for this facility would require 25, and that is 1 space per 400 square feet. The landscape plan, trees and green open space are shown conceptually on this plan. The final is subject to Planning Commission approval during appearance review. The building elevation is 100% masonry, and 15% of that will be stone and 85% will be EPIS. Any lighting on the exterior of this facility would be wall mounted, and any pole lights will be limited to 15 feet in height. All lights will be shielded and pointed downward away from adjacent residential properties. If you look at the bottom of page 2, it shows you originally what PUD 16 allowed. And you can see there highlighted in blue that use unit 5 was not allowed, and they are asking for that to be allowed as a children's nursery only. If you look at page 3, I will add to the Planning Commission's attention, there are 2 items. I'm going to give one staff report, but there are actually 2 items that you will need to take a motion on. The first one will be the major amendment to the planned unit development, and the second one will be approval of a lot split. So for the major amendment, staff supports the request for child care use for use unit 5. Opaque screening should be provided by the commercial developer builder adjacent to the residences. In regards to the lot split, they need to provide a revised lot split exhibit showing the following: a dedicated mutual access between the parent tract and the new tract, drive aisle as proposed in the site plan. Number 2, revise limits of no access on the Yorktown Village plat and meet all city requirements. And number 3, provide maintenance language for shared mutual access. I talk extensively with Mr. Beach on these items. He has no problem unless he expresses it otherwise, but at the time we had our conversation, he did not, so I'll speak for him. And there's a list of comments that we just had internally. Most of those have been addressed. The intended use, as I already stated, if you're looking at page 4 at the very bottom, it says public comment. Several citizens called and contacted the staff. There was one citizen who called and had some concerns, and I believe that citizen may be present this evening. They didn't leave an email comment with us, but I believe they will be here and present to speak. The other citizens who called basically wanted to know what was going to take place, and they didn't seem too concerned about it. On page 5 of the staff report, talks about the comprehensive plan. It's shown as medium commercial. Let's see. If you look to the north of it, there is basically residential uses, but on that hard corner on the north, there is its own commercial general, but it's actually a residence that's functioning as an office. To the south is more of PUD 16, and it's zone commercial shopping. They also have a single-family residential development within that commercial shopping area. I believe it's Weston at Wakefield. If you were to look to the west, it's industrial medium and undeveloped, and to the east are other parts of the Wakefield development community. On page 6, there's a Google shot, and I kind of just laid the plat over that just for your information. On page 7, I actually took excerpts from the original PUD, so you can kind of see what the original planned unit development said. Page 8, we have the staff evaluation. This project has 2 code procedures for compliance. The original PUD did not allow for use unit 5, and staff believes the request is not injurious to the surrounding area. It is compatible with the comprehensive plan and meets the other requirements of the PUD. Therefore, staff sees no reason to deny the project. For the lot split, there are some details that need to be submitted and worked through, but at this time, I do not see any reason from a staff perspective to deny the lot split at this time, knowing that the applicant will work very closely with the city. The city engineer is well aware of the conditions, and the building inspector is also aware, and these items will be addressed. My recommendation is to approve JZ 20-656 PUD 16, major amendment to PUD 16, and JL 20345, a lot split for the Learning Center, per staff comments. Building permit is subject to completion of a required lot split file.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, any questions or comments? No one has any questions or comments on this agenda item?
Well, since you asked, I'll say.
Okay.
It seems, even though this is medium intensity, this seems like a fairly light use for the adjoining neighborhoods. So I'm curious what the public has to say. You mentioned there's one person who's here, but I can think of a lot more intense uses that might be more bothersome to neighbors. So let's hear what they have to say when it's time.
All right. I will open it to the floor after we hear from the applicant.
And Carol, if I may, just real quick, the one consideration that I do think there would be is traffic coming in and out. As looking at the outline in the application, it would load that street. I don't think there's a turn lane there yet. It may be there may be something, but that would be a busy add-on in the morning and in the afternoon. But aside from that, I think that's the major concern that I have about it.
That's a good point, because there is no turn lane in front of where they're talking about that I'm aware of. Okay, Mr. Beach, if you'd like to give us your name and address and give us some more information.
Madam Chair, I do have one question that kind of related to the last comment. And I was originally looking at the parking on this. And of course, with daycare facilities, the kids aren't going to be driving. So most of the activity is going to be pick up and drop off, most of which is in the morning. And I noticed that the parking, there's a long row of parking on the west side of the facility. And again, looking where traffic will be entering the property, if that's going to create any bottlenecks with the design of that. Typically, if you look at daycares or schools, you'll have kind of drop-off lanes. So again, there is a question, I would agree, whether or not this will back up into traffic issues. That's all I've got.
Okay. Mr. Beach?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Jim Beach, Wallace Engineering, 123 North Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Tulsa. I don't have a lot to add. Marseille covered this very well. I will note that on the lot split, the items that she's listed as being required, we've already begun to work on that, and I submitted a revised drawing or an exhibit showing the mutual access easement and the adjustment to the access locations. I guess it was last Thursday, so it may not have made its way into the file yet. I know everyone's been busy, but and Marseille, if you don't have that, please let me know and I'll send it to you again. The facility is, as you know, it's a child care facility. This is a company that has been operating child care facilities. They're currently, I think, in 20 states, and they have maybe like 300 locations. They have a well-defined program, and they have very specific site requirements that have been tested over time for them. Jerry Frazier represents the company and I believe is on this call. So if he has any additional things that he can say about the operations or the requirements as far as the number of parking or how they lay out their sites, then he's free to jump in, of course. But what you're looking at is pretty typical for the learning experience site layout. I really don't have anything else to add other than you'll note on the landscape plan we're planting a heavy row of trees along the east side to buffer between the project and the adjacent residential properties. The mutual access drive that comes in off of 121st is stubbed at the back end of the property, the south end, anticipating development to the south in the future. So we've been in touch with the fire chief 2 or 3 times and worked out an arrangement that works well for him to be able to access and service this facility if needed. And I believe that's about it from me. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Okay, I have a question that I want to ask, or maybe it's just some clarification that I thought maybe you would come. I noticed in our agenda packet there was a lot of information, since one of our concerns is traffic, about traffic tie-off. And since this is a big company all over the country, I don't want to assume anything, so I'll ask the question, and maybe Mr. Frazier can be the one to answer it, about the drop-off time. It's got an estimated number of people, and I'm not sure what page this is, but a few pages past all the photographs that we have, where it talks about the learning experience in the company. They have a page talking about traffic drop-off and pickup, and is that pretty true to form? So we should not have to worry about traffic turning in, or is that actual? I guess is my question.
Well, I think you would have to answer that specifically, but this is a document that I requested in order to help describe the company and its operations for you guys. Mm-hmm. And I take it at its word.
Okay.
And Carol, let me follow up. I don't know that turning in for the most part will be the issue, because I think, where this is, if people coming in will be turning primarily off of 121st going, headed east, and so then we make the right-hand turn, but it's coming out where I think that the traffic could become a concern, and people pulling out into oncoming traffic. If you drive down Elm, when under normal circumstances, when there are normal traffic during the school time, if you're there at 7:30, 7:40 in that time frame, people trying to get in and out of the learning center that is off of Elm has created accidents, and it creates dangerous situations where people drive in the turn lane, do other things because the traffic gets backed up. And so that's just the concern that I have, is that if traffic is not, if traffic is not dealt with, and especially if that intersection doesn't ultimately get developed more than it is now, it could create some issues there.
I might just note that the mutual access easement is going to be connected to Casey's as it currently is. We're rearranging the access points onto 121st and eliminating one that's over near the far northeast corner of this site in favor of one that's where you see it on the site plan. But there will be a second option, which is for people to go to the west in order to get to the Casey's parking lot. Mutual access, shared access, so it would be understood that that's a possibility. So that may be, I'm not saying that's the perfect solution, but it may alleviate some of the issues. And drivers in that situation are going to self-regulate as much as they can. They're not going to want to sit in line forever. So if they see an opportunity to move over to another entrance or exit, I would expect some of them would do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
This is Jerry Frazier with Embry Asset Group. The only thing I would add is that we are providing a shared access for the length of our property that will be continued as the development progresses. Eventually that should tie into the west, so there could be a potential for relief at some point for traffic to exit south and then west, relieving some of the impact on the main road. Looking for the street name.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, ma'am, not this time.
Okay. Do we have someone in the audience or an email or something that would like to address this at this point?
Yes, they're coming forward.
Okay. If you would give us your name and address, please.
Corey Hopcraft. I live at 414 West 120th Place South in Jenks, Oklahoma. I live in Beckett Ridge. And my concern is, well, I've got three, but my primary concern is the traffic. That traffic at 6:30 in the evening or 6:30 in the morning is horrendous. You can't get out. People cut through our neighborhood because they don't want to wait at the light. I just see that as one entrance in and one entrance out, you're going to have issues. And for this to be profitable, they're going to have people there. The other problem I have is, given with the other business that's there, they like to have their trash dumped at 3 in the morning and their grass cut at 4:30 in the morning. And I was just wondering if that was going to be regulated at all with this new business. I don't have a problem with the daycare. I do have a problem with the traffic. There isn't a turn lane, and for me to have to wait excessive amount of time to get out of my neighborhood, I think is wrong. They don't use the light properly. They go through my neighborhood constantly, and they speed through my neighborhood because they don't want to wait for the light, because it backs up for a mile. I understand, I get it, but what is going to be, and I don't want to say long-term, but if this is constructed within 9 months, what are y'all going to do about the traffic problem? And going through Casey's parking lot, I don't think it's a good idea, because they were talking about having access through the parking lot at Casey's off of Elm, going west. I understood right?
Yes, that ultimately there would be a mutual access to the west that would cross all three properties.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wanted to go north, I could go across that mutual access. It would be like a frontage road.
Okay.
And so I'd be able to go across all three properties, turn right, and go north on
On Elm, so then you could go south on Elm and turn into onto that roadway.
if I came through the light, yes.
Came through the line, okay. Because as of now, I have lights in my bedroom constantly within Casey's. So I was just curious to know if the way it's going to be built, if there's going to be a lit like they have at the other place, which will cause, lights in my bedroom. And fortunately, I'm up by 6:30, but still, I'm curious to know how you're going to handle the traffic. That's my chief complaint. Because
Your time is almost up, but could you reiterate your three concerns? You said you have three.
traffic, the
Traffic.
trash pickup, and the traffic being just thrown that I'm always picking up, and lawn care for the facility. if they're gonna hire the lawn care. You sound like me.
Sorry.
That's fine,
Okay,
but
got
lawn
it.
care being,
Lawn care, okay.
Yeah. you know, they're gonna hire a private company, and I understand they've only got a certain amount of hours to do things, but
Right.
they don't need to be mowing and blowing at 4:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point then, does the applicant wish to address any of the three issues that she brought up?
Well, excuse me, the traffic is probably the big issue for everyone, it sounds like, but the streets are what they are, and as the city develops further and those streets are improved, then that problem will alleviate. Until that time, I think this facility may have a concentration of traffic at certain peak periods of the day, and other times it won't happen at all. There are plenty of other uses that could go in here by right that would be more intense from a traffic standpoint, considerably more intense. And like I say, the mutual access easement will extend across over to Casey's. That mutual access easement has always been there. So the opportunity for a developer to come in and be able to access across that way has always been part of the plan for this development. So other than that, no, I don't have any other things to offer.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. Okay, at this point, I'll close the floor. Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, as far as traffic, there was a bond issue that was scheduled for April 7th, which was delayed to widen Elm down to 131st from 111th. So that's been postponed with the pandemic, but that is the plan generally. Now, obviously, it still needs to be voted on, but it seems like there's support and then constructed as well. But just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
That's a good point. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we have two items that we're gonna vote on. First, I'll ask for a motion for the amendment to allow for the child care facility. Do I hear a motion?
This is Leon Davis. I'll make a motion
John Brown, second.
for J20.
Travis Holgerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. And now may I ask, I'm asking for a motion to approve the lot split for JL 20-345.
That will be subject to the revisions proposed.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
This is John. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Craig Bowman.
Travis Wilkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Okay, with that, we are done with new business. We're going to move on to old business. And in the old business, we have 4 agenda items. We will be voting on each one of these separately, but as we go through it, they're going to be read as one. So I will go through, I will read it, what the 4 agenda items are, and then turn it over to our city planner for a general discussion on all of them, and then we will vote on or make a motion on one or all 4 of the motion, all the items. First item is JZ 20-655. It's a request by Robert Bell for a zone change to a river-oriented commercial at 813 East B Street. This also includes JZ 20-64 PUD 120 request for plan unit development 120 Fiddler Acre at the same location. The third one is ROW-UEC 20-74, the request for a utility easement closure at this location. And the fourth part is approval of a Fiddler Acre preliminary plat. Marseille?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Planning Commission, and staff. The first thing I would like to say is at the May 21st, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did vote to approve the comprehensive plan amendment. That amendment conversation took a long time, and there was a lot of consideration. That item went to City Council this past week on Tuesday, the 2nd, and we had the neighbors come and speak, and this is in Councilor Lynn's ward, and she was very cautious with her vote and with the conversation, and really wanting to make sure that the community heard the neighbors and heard their hearts and their concerns, and that those were addressed as much as they could be within a comprehensive plan hearing. It is just a land use guide, but those comments were heard. In the end, the comprehensive plan amendment was approved. So the request to change the comprehensive plan from medium intensity office to medium intensity river oriented commercial was approved, and because of that, we may now continue with the following 4 items. Had that agenda item not been approved at City Council, we would be having a different conversation tonight. So for the public who is online and maybe not familiar with the conversation, this lot that we're talking about is 813 East B Street. It is north of B Street and west of Riverwalk. It's basically located to the west, of the Jenks Riverwalk. So this is literally as you're coming into the heart of the city. If you come across the beautiful white bridge across the Arkansas River, you turn right, you go a little bit north, you're at the Riverwalk, you have the Jenks Aquarium to the south, and this parcel is on the west side of the levee, and it's been vacant. There was previously 2 homes on the site. Those homes have been removed. The applicant is present, Mr. Robert Bell. He is representing a client, and I want to say for the record, there is no specific restaurant use at the table for discussion this evening. So I don't know if Planning Commission had in mind to ask that question. It's not on the agenda. It cannot be discussed, and I can confirm that there is no one specific at the table to do this tonight. So when you come around that corner, and this is a good shot showing the actual lot. It's very deep. It was previously approved for office medium intensity. So that office medium intensity, when the applicant came, previously there was a request for commercial shopping that was denied. It was approved for office medium later, about a year later. The office medium has multiple items that could happen. At the time that it was approved, the applicant suggested that he would like to build 2 office buildings towards the back. They would be 2 stories tall and reserve the front for future commercial development. That seemed very palatable to the neighbors, or at least as palatable as could be when you don't really feel comfortable with any development there, but if you have to accept something, that seemed acceptable. So it was approved. That particular project did not happen. The applicant now would like to sell the property and is asking to change the zoning and put a planned unit development over it. I know the Planning Commission understands the process, but for the public, I'm going to reiterate it, and especially for those who are not here this evening and maybe do not understand how zoning works. There is straight zoning, which exists currently. And currently it is office medium. And within office medium, there are certain uses, if you look in the zoning code, that are allowed by right. And that usually shows up in the matrix as an X. So I'm just gonna go through those really quickly. So use unit number 1, which is area-wide uses by right. Usually passive agriculture is what that means. That's allowed by right. There's an X there in the code. You can have off-street parking. And, number 5, which is community services and cultural facilities. Number 10, off-street parking. And number 11, offices and studios. And I mentioned that because use unit 5, which is allowed by right, has a lot of items that maybe the public didn't understand could be allowed. And I have a list. This is taken again from the code. So if you have any questions, use unit 5 could include an art gallery, a children's nursery, which we just talked about in the previous approval, a cultural facility, a day camp, educational and recreational establishments, emergency and protective shelter, library, planetarium, private lodge or club, public tennis courts, residential treatment center, sanitation, transitional living center. So those are just a few of the items that would be allowed by right if I owned that property and wanted to submit a building permit. This particular rezoning request is for river-oriented commercial. If it did not come with a planned unit development, I, as a planner, and I, as the planner for the city of Jenks, would not feel comfortable recommending approval because there are too many uses that could go on there that I do not feel would be advantageous or protective of the community at large. So now I'm going to go through some of those. Use unit number 4 would be allowed by right. That's public protection. Use unit 10, off-street parking. Use unit 12, which is eating places. That's a restaurant. Use unit 13, convenience goods and services. So that's your general dry cleaners, etc. Like a Walgreens, something like that. Number 14, shopping goods and services. Number 19, hotel, motel, recreation facilities. And number 21, business signs. There are other uses allowed through the PUD or through a special exception, but those are the ones, or a specific use permit, but those are the ones that are allowed by right, no questions asked. This rezoning, if accompanied with PUD 120 as presented in the revised staff report, only has 2 uses allowed on this site. They are a restaurant use and an office use. Nothing else can be built on this site if the PUD is approved along with the rezoning. I want to make it clear, I do not support changing the rezoning without changing or approving the planned unit development. I'm going to take a breath. If you go to page 2 of the staff report, it talks about the appearance district, and this particular lot is not in the appearance district, but it was written with the standards, and the picture that's presented also reflects something built around the 1900s. The comp plan map amendment, which is listed here on page 2, was approved. The current the current zoning is OM. The current request for a rezoning, which is item number 1 on the agenda for this project, is ROC, river-oriented commercial. The lot is currently unplatted. The proposed plat is called Fiddler Acre. It is 1 lot, 1 block, 1 lot, 1 block, 1 acre. The street is, there are 2 streets involved with this plat and with this site plan. They are B Street and Riverfront Drive. We had a couple of technical advisory committee comments, and part of this application includes working with the technical advisory committee and getting the correct easements, which has been discussed at large and is required for approval. This item is also in Councilor Lynn's ward. It's in ward number 1, which is kind of the heart of the city of Jenks. I'm gonna skip page 4. Go to page 5 of 13. So this is where we're talking about the rezoning JZ 20-655 from office medium to river-oriented commercial. And what I would ask the Planning Commission to consider is river-oriented commercial a good fit at the intersection of B Street and Riverfront Drive. I would say to the Planning Commission and to the public, it is not a good fit if you are not willing to approve the planned unit development, which is the overlay that is suggested for this site. Page 6 of 13 is planned unit development JZ 20-645 PUD 120. It's a whole lot of letters, but basically, is PUD 120 a good fit at the intersection of B Street and Riverfront Drive? And does it provide enough protections and restrictions for residential citizens? So when we talk about the planned unit development, Mr. Bell has revised the planned unit development. We did have a hearing on May 21st. No action was taken, but there were comments made by the Planning Commission to the best of his ability, and from what I can tell, he revised the planned unit development to meet the requirements. One of the requirements that I personally stated and feel pretty confident about is the type of screening and that would be provided for the neighbors. I did suggest a masonry screening. I don't think that that is in the planned unit development, so keep that in the back of your mind. When we went to City Council for the comprehensive plan amendment, Councilor Lynn asked that the public be a part of the conversation, and the especially concerning if Planning Commission chooses to approve the planned unit development and the rezoning, that they be a part of kind of hammering out the details of protections. So what kind of fence is there? Where is that fence located? What kind of landscaping? Having that conversation. I believe that she suggested that maybe someone could represent the community and meet together to get that those items hammered out. So it says here the applicant has revised and resubmitted PUD 120 to include comments received at the Planning Commission meeting held May 21st, 2020. The applicant currently proposes a high-end restaurant on a parcel that's 1 acre. It's approximately 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. The only other thing that would be allowed on this site per the planned unit development is an office. So there's only 2 uses that we're considering. If this is approved and someone wants to do something bigger, wants to have a change of the access that is ultimately approved, wants to have a different use, it would require, and it is stated in the planned unit development, a major amendment. There would be a notice to everyone within 300 square feet, and we would be back to the table to have another conversation. So if you look down here, the screening 8-foot fence is required to be built and maintained by the commercial entity along the north and west property line. The properties there are in the comprehensive plan. The 3 lots to the west are identified already as office medium. They could very well someday transition to office medium. The one adjacent to B Street on the west already is an attorney's office. It is a residence, but it functions as an office and is supported in the comprehensive plan as such. So that would serve as a buffer to the west. But one of the issues that I find with some older planned unit developments is they don't put the responsibility and the burden of the screening on the applicant, the commercial applicant, and it falls on the neighbors, and that oftentimes creates injustices for those neighbors if they can't afford to keep the fence up, etc. And just because there's an existing fence, it is still the responsibility and burden of the applicant to provide the correct fence in the correct place. What I need you to consider is planned unit development 120 a good fit at the intersection of B Street and Riverfront Drive, and does it provide enough protections and restrictions for residential citizens? The next page, 7 of 13 in the staff report, is the plat for Fiddler Acre. As you know, a lot of times when we talk about new development or redevelopment of a site, we like to discuss in great depth and detail the drainage and everything. Mr. Bell has put in the planned unit development that the property cannot be, stamped when we're doing the redevelopment, the grading.
It's a compaction process.
Yep.
Cannot be used as a pneumatic stamp. That'll protect the neighborhoods. It has to be rolled.
Okay, so I think the not city attorney, but the attorney that was to the west had issues previously because the land was stamped and not rolled, and that is part of the planned unit development. That's not generally something you would find, but it was thoughtful of the applicant to add that. There are some other things. There's one thing, and I apologize in advance to Mr. Bell and to the Planning Commission. I have not had this conversation. Because there are some access agreement and some other things, I would like this to be approved, and he doesn't have to agree with me, but I would prefer this to be approved as a preliminary plat. And once the deed of dedication is updated and the access agreement is completed and approved with the city, then I would like it to come back as a final plat. And Mr. Bell, I apologize, I did not have a conversation.
I just hate doing it twice, but
I know.
I'm okay with that.
He says he's okay with that, even though he doesn't like to do it twice. So that being said, consideration is, does the plat meet the standards of the city of Jenks? I believe the answer to that is yes, once the criteria set forth in the code is met, and if the planned unit development is approved, then the deed of dedication would be reflected with those changes. The last item on the agenda is the utility easement closure, ROW-E or UEC 20-74. You can see there's kind of right through the middle of that property a utility easement. The applicant is asking to close that. Staff has no objection to it. They actually dedicate the easement in the correct place where the actual utility is located. Currently that was there, but the utility line was installed in a completely different place. No problem with that. Just as an FYI for the public, an applicant could come forth with a plat even if there were not a zone change or planned unit development on the table. So if I owned the property, if I was Mr. Fiddler, I could petition the city for a plat approval and easement closure at any time. So those two items are not contingent upon approval of the rezoning or the planned unit development. Page 9 of 13 starts kind of the comments. I had one comment in my very first conversation with Mr. Bell regarding this project. I saw the picture that he put on the front. I like the picture. I think it fits nicely with the downtown, at least the vision that has been cast that I've understood from what I've read and from Councilor Lynn and from the code. My only comment was I don't like in a downtown area to see the big metal and plastic channel set lettering that we approved on the Melody Lane project. I think it's fine for a strip mall. I don't think it's really good for a quaint downtown business. And he did agree to take that out. When he was making the revision, he was doing a copy and paste and it was back in there. So I do recommend approval per staff comments and removing the channel set lettering from the PUD. With all of that being said, I personally do not have any more comments. I do recommend approval of the rezoning with the approval of the planned unit development, which only allows for a restaurant and office use. I see no reason to not approve the closing of the utility easement. City of Jenks has established that it has no present or future reason to reopen this easement, and it will not, therefore foreclosure of the right to reopen the easement will not be disputed in district court. On the preliminary plat, I do ask that it be approved and that it come back one more time as a final plat. That is all I have to say. There are people, citizens who would like to speak. I have The chair did speak up earlier saying that they're allowed 3 minutes and we have to speak on the topics that are directly on the agenda. That being said, I will turn it over to the Planning Commission if you have any questions for me at this time.
Great. Thank you, Marseille. Okay, any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I do have a question with regard to page 9 of the staff report. There was actually one of the items that's listed as a question. It's item number 4, referencing page 5. Can we get some clarification of that?
The FAA is the Federal Aviation Administration. I finally figured it out on my own.
Yeah, with having the question in there, that's why I was wondering why that was there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
So what exactly has been proposed for any sort of barrier or fencing or screening? I personally, I'm very interested in something like that. And this seems like if we move forward, should be a responsibility of the applicant to me, but it shouldn't be a problem, but I'm just not quite sure where things stand. Marseille, maybe you had the background on that.
I would, I have made my recommendation. I do not believe that the PUD fully reflects my recommendation, and Mr. Bell can address that. I think that there should be some amount of masonry on the north property line. On the west, I'm not so concerned because those properties could very well transition into office in the future, or some very light commercial, but mostly they have an office opportunity. But on the north, I do think that there needs to be some level of masonry. And he did, Mr. Bell does propose, I believe, an 8-foot screening with, I believe, mature or like large trees. I'm gonna have to let Mr. Bell speak directly to what he has proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners? Okay, at this point, we will allow the applicant to give us a presentation and respond to some of these questions. Remember, Mr. Bell, you are limited to 10 minutes.
For 4 applications, that's almost impossible for me.
10 minutes.
You can do it.
Time starts now.
Chairman, members of the commission, thank you very much for your time. My name is Robert Bell. I live at 1011 West G Street in Jenks, Oklahoma. I'm glad to finally get out in front of you and explain our application, because I think that it's very thorough, and we took all the comments from Lloyd Landreth, the attorney next door. All of his comments have been incorporated into this application. All the discussion that we had at the Planning Commission last week was incorporated also into this application. Carrie, if we can go to the site plan, I think that would be most helpful. There you go. The PUD, the zone change to ROC, and the plan amendment was the best fit for this property, and protects the neighborhoods the most, except it doesn't go far enough, and I agreed. And my original application for the PUD had the uses limited. After discussion with the city staff, I even limited me even further. There's only 2 uses being proposed. One can be done right now already, which is an office development, and the other is a restaurant facility at that location. I specified that the existing site plan and building plan be incorporated into the PUD under the appearance review guidelines. Therefore, if the building design changes and this is what we propose is not built, it would have to come back to the planning commission under the appearance review guidelines. If any of the site plan changes, then it would have to come back to the planning commission and city council under the major amendment of the PUD. So we really kind of tightened it down to this is what we're going to get, and if we don't get, somebody's going to look at it, kind of a concept. I'm going to address Lloyd Landreth's concerns. One was and he's an adjacent neighbor that's supportive of the application, and he had three things that he wanted us to address. One, he wanted to make sure that the trash containers were not next to his office building. Two, he wanted some sort of a small barrier between the properties where his parking lot and the driveway access was. And also, he was concerned that when Louis went in and they were stamping that property, it wreaked havoc on his property at that point, and we eliminated that also. So the PUD has a requirement for a landscape plan to be submitted, and at a minimum, that landscape plan has to have either bollards or a fence or some sort of barrier that would stop cars from being able to cross over into the Landreth tract at that point. That landscape plan also has a requirement for an 8-foot high solid wood fence from the back of the which is the north half, the halfway point along the west boundary, that goes all the way to the north boundary, and then all the way across the north boundary to the city property on the east. So that entire area will have an 8-foot high solid wood fence. I know that Marseille has said something about masonry in that location. We've also included a line of evergreen trees along the north property line. I don't think there's any difference in the sound quality between the masonry and the wood. The difference would be the longevity of that, and so the difference of 10 years or 12 years or 15 years or 20 years is the material between the wood and the masonry. It doesn't change the character of the sound that it's there to provide. However, I don't think that we're creating a sound issue for them, other than the cars in the parking lot, and that 8-foot barrier wood fence would definitely alleviate that, help alleviate that. There is an outdoor seating area associated with this building that is located on the south half. That seating area is located all on the east side of the building. At that point, there is no music venue associated with this being proposed. And there's a requirement in the PUD that there is no amplified sound that can be placed on the outside of the building at that point. Traffic was a concern. Was a concern of the council a few years back. This parking lot I designed, and I submitted the application to the city for access to Riverfront Drive at that point. So what you see is a two-way in off of B Street, and you see a right turn in and a right turn out off of Riverfront Drive. The parking lot that's located on the north half consists of two one-way roads. So if you come into the property off B Street, and you get back into the parking lot, you can only go north on the west lane, and you can only go south on the east lane. What that does is when you're leaving the facility, you'll find yourself facing the road where you have a choice to either go to Riverfront Drive to the left, or go all the way back through the development to B Street. The idea is we're forcing traffic back to the intersection, get them out of this property as fast as we can at that point. Stormwater, and I'm gonna have to address some of the plat issues.
You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, and that's where I'm gonna get out of whack on time. The stormwater currently goes to the north and enters the drainage ditch on the north that's next to the residential or in the residential development at that point. We are changing that, which improves that whole area. We are removing that from that because that whole drainage area goes to the city's detention facility, and we're going to drain directly to the city's detention facility. The question that has to be answered by the development is what's the best way to get to that facility? Do we meter it directly into it? Do we direct flow into it? And that answer is going to be done by hydrologists. The other thing that has to do a study on is the lighting in the parking lot, and I propose that we limit the height of the light poles in that parking lot. They have to be shielded, so with no direct light can go back towards the neighborhoods. Everything would flow towards the inners of this development into the commercial property. So they're shutting me down, and I've tried to get a lot of this in there. And I know that you guys might have some questions, but I think I've addressed this, all of the issues, and every bit of this is written in the application and specified specifically, thoroughly, and any changes to this would click off the requirements to come back through the planning commission or back to the planning commission and city council at that point. The easement in the back that we're vacating, they put an easement on this property, then they built the sewer line, and they built the sewer line south of the easement. So I'm having to resubmit an easement in the plat, and I need to get rid of the old one because it's in the way.
Thank you.
So
Thank
if commission
Okay, at
has
this-
any questions, or if they can
At this time, the floor for the planning commissioners. The planning commissioners have any questions or comments to Mr. Bell?
I've got one. I missed the conclusion of his thought. I know he indicated that that the trash was not going to be placed next to the office that's next door, but where did it end up on the site? I couldn't find it.
What I don't think that's been fully determined, but what I think will happen, and in the PD, there's a requirement that the trash bin has to be built out of the same material of the building, which is brick or rock or however that is. Just at the end of the attorney's ownership, the road from Riverwalk comes across and then goes out to B, and then turns and goes to B Street. That location right there is the best location to build the facility that houses the trash, because what it'll do is it'll allow the trash truck to come from Riverwalk pick the trash up and go directly out to B Street and not have any backing motion or not have any needs for, other words, it's a necessary evil, and that's the best situation for it.
Tell me, describe exactly where you're talking about again, Mr. Bell.
So if you come from Riverwalk and where the two arrows and the access road is at that point,
Right.
and you come straight across, and you see that parking area there designed where the little sticks out, that's located on the west line. This facility would back up right there. That would allow the trash trucks to drive straight to it and then out to B Street.
And so does that back up to a home then?
Yes.
It does back up to a home.
Nice. Yep. Nice.
That owner is aware of that site plan's been good, and that was the owner that submitted that he was in favor of the application. So,
Right. So my question though is, I understand that you know, obviously the material is going to be built of things so that the appearance is going to be appropriate and look appropriate, but certainly food waste can have a smell that may impact the residents in their enjoyment of their backyard, right?
And the other location, and actually this shows that location that was considered, is on the east side of the property, directly across there. You can see kind of the same setup where there's an island sticking out in towards the traffic way at that point, and there's it might even say trash container right there.
Right here.
Yeah, right next to the building, right at the northeast corner of the building. That's where it's shown at this time, and those two places have been discussed. If you want to limit it to that space, that's fine. Or on that line somewhere in that regards. The only thing I was saying is if you move it to the east line in some direction, then you're going to have more noise with the truck coming into the property and having to maneuver around the parking lot and back up and so forth. So
I'll speak from my own preference. I would rather have a short bit of noise than a constant smell. So
I agree. I don't think any trash container close to a residential
we're
area.
fine with the idea that the trash container needs to be located on the east property line at some point. If you can leave us the ability to design that into that parking lot, that's what we need to do.
and Mr. Bell, I mean, you stay on the east line, but again, if you start to get to the northeast corner of the parking lot, you're again starting to get to areas that are backing to
I would agree, John, was this Mr. Brown? I would agree because I would hate for that trash bin to be located in the far northeast corner, mainly because that's the access towards the stormwater detention, and that could get into, and that might, I need to make sure that we keep those two entities apart at that point. So I agree with you. For different reasons, I agree with you.
Can I jump in here for just a second as well? This is John. Yeah, and I was concerned about that as well. The direction, and I realize this is a preliminary plat. the direction that you have on the parking, I would agree with Commissioner Fulkerson on this. If it were on the east line and closest to the entrance, so would you put it farther to the south end of the parking, so the southeast side of that parking area, that puts it the farthest away from the residents from a standpoint of any rodents or smell that might be associated with food that's in there. The other thing is, and yes, you're right, when the trash trucks are backing up, they've got the alarm sounding, but the sound of a dumpster flipping upended is also very noisy. So I'd rather see that as far away from the residents as possible. So the other question I'd have is, where you were proposing on the northeast corner of the building, is there a walking path that's designed to go from the parking on the east side to the front of the building?
There's not a walkway on the east side of the building at that point, but there's a sidewalk on the north side of the building and on the west side of the building. And so I would, and I'm guessing here at this point, guys, I would guess that there's only about 20-foot strip of land between where the building is and the east property line, that there can be some outside seating. When Riverwalk has fireworks shows or the other activity that's located in the Riverfront Entertainment District, that could be a very, we all know that Jenks is on the right side of the river because we have the ability to have buildings that provide shade. So I think that's an important area at that point. So that's what that's used for.
So back to my comment, as cars are turning into the lot from the east, if you're the illustration that you've got on the preliminary plat, on the angle of the parking lines, if you were actually shift the angles to where you're using diagonal parking, diagonal parking going from southwest to northeast, you'd be giving up 3 parking spaces right there, but you could do an enclosed area for a dumpster that would actually then enter from the south side. So any backing up would be at least on the east end of the lot.
I think I understand what you're saying, and you're switching the parking angles.
So
going to the north to going to the south, but you're really defeating the purpose in doing so by having traffic end up at that point, at that location, and having a choice whether to turn and connect with Riverfront Drive or go all the way back through the development. And if you bring them out the other way, where the traffic is pointed to the north or pointed toward the south on the west side, the west drive line, then that choice is to go straight, to go to B Street, or turn left to get back to the intersection. And I think it's the city's, I think it's in the best interest of the city to have the traffic go to the intersection. And so that was the design, that was the idea of the design. I don't have a problem with creating the design of the dumpster and it will be masonry and nature and covered and everything that needs to be. But we might just having a trash truck go through once a day versus having all the traffic of the site going out towards B Street. I think it's in our best interest to have that flow to Riverfront Drive as the more convenient action.
Yeah, again, if I look at the flow of the traffic, you've got the traffic entering from the east side, going all the way to the west end, the west lot line, and then going north, making a circle, then coming around south, then to exit. But really, all you'd have to do then would be change the direction of the flow so that as they're coming right in off of the riverfront, turning in to the north on the first row, and then circling back around on the far west side going south. Then they can either go east to exit, or they can go north. But I think it's really just changing the direction of flow.
And again, I mean, we can do that. There's not a problem in doing that, but you are definitely defeating the purpose. And I will tell you that if I'm sitting there at a stop sign facing the south and have a choice to go out to B Street straight, or I have to make a left-hand turn to get out of the property, I'm going to go straight. It's safer at that point. So that was the purpose of this design, was to facilitate the traffic to go back to the intersection. If that's if that's not important to you, then
yeah, it is important to me, but can't that just be resolved with a sign that says no exit, so that they don't go out that direction?
now you're boxing up the whole parking lot.
I'm just throwing it out.
In other words, if you're saying that I don't have two full access points at that point, and that's a danger, fire danger. And there's a code requirement related to that. So.
Yeah, I realize that I mean, it literally does have to be an exit, but if the idea is to flow the traffic out that way, and you can do that simply by painting arrows on the parking lot. I'll be quiet and see if anybody else wants to weigh in on that. I'm just again looking for a way to get that dumpster on the east lot line and away from the residents is all.
We don't have a problem to have a requirement to have the dumpster on the east property line.
Okay, that's great. Let's move on. Any other comments? If all the commissioners have asked or what they want to say, I'm getting ready to open it up to the floor. So this is your last chance. Anybody else? Okay, at this point, we'll open it up to the floor. I understand there's some people that are here present, and please remember that you have 3 minutes to respond to us. And if the first person would come forward and give us their name and address.
Hi, my name is Mary Nell Scott Hall, and I live at 717 East E, and yes, I'm in the cul-de-sac. And I have a few issues after looking at the plan. One of the major issues, obviously, was the screening. And I agree with Marseille that it really should be masonry. Number one, it won't have to be replaced. Number two, with the fence that's been up there in the past, kids have played with it and wiggled it and opened up a piece and been able to crawl through. So I see that as a major issue, plus the fact it's a soundproofer. We here, since the two houses were taken down, I can literally go out in my front yard and I can hear someone's conversation sitting at a table at Louis. Okay, so the sound really is an issue. I thought maybe Mr. Landreth was kind of on our side in a way, and then I thought, well, it wasn't really too nice of him. He's not there when the trash trucks come that we hear from Riverwalk, and they are at 3:30 in the morning, and they are loud, and even though we have double pane windows, it wakes you up. I mean, I have an elderly mother with me, and she gets scared because she hears the noise. The other issue I thought was, why not, I understand he wants to direct traffic and all that and have two ins and outs, but there's so much traffic coming up and down B Street, and yes, now it's not just with school. We do have more traffic there. And so trying to get out, I understand all that, but I thought maybe if the wall was constructed where they want to, because obviously Mr. Landreth doesn't want people to be able to park in his space, but he's not there at nights, okay? but to go ahead and put the wall up that way, then go across the north pan, and then wherever the entryway is on the east side or the Riverwalk part, to go up to that certain point, you know, where it would sort of curve around, and that would really create a better barrier. The other thing that was addressed is if it's going to only be 8 foot tall and everything else, including the signage, was 15 feet high, the lighting was 12 feet high, all those things could, you know, go out over that. And the other thing was a drainage issue. Okay, when Riverwalk was built, we had drainage issue anyway. When it was built, it didn't get better, it got worse, okay? And when they raised off the property and they left some of the ground up higher, now we get even more drainages. If they can, you know, get rid of that, that's wonderful. But to protect our property, thank you so much, commissioners, for talking about the smell of the garbage and so forth, and rats, because nobody thinks about that. They're not gonna go through a wall. They might go through a fence, you never know. You know, a wall would definitely be a better issue. Otherwise, we realize that there's not too much else we could have done at this circumstance. We're happy that they're trying to be beneficial to us. We don't want it not to take place, but we do have those considerations for our safety and for our property devaluation not happening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next person, please. Is there someone else from the audience that wishes to speak?
They're coming
Okay.
forward.
Okay, sorry, can't see.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Marie Olson. I live at 714 East E, and I'm in the cul-de-sac, and my property, the corner of my front yard is up against the north side of this property. So I'm right there. And after listening, I was thinking about the screening at the wall also, that it needs to be more than just a wooden fence. Because no matter what was said, we all know that to really dampen the sound, it would work better if it was something more solid than a fence, just a regular wooden fence. And and trees will help, but the problem with the trees is they're not gonna rise way above that fence for some time. So I think that a good solid masonry type or concrete, whatever they make them out of, should go across the north, and at least the north and the west sides of that property where the other houses are. I know that they could eventually be made into offices, but right now there are people living there, and certainly having a better wall would help rather than hurt later, even if they did put offices or something else in there. Because they would have a different thing from the restaurant operation. I worry also that we talked about music. They didn't plan to have a music venue, but if they do have music outside at all, even if it's not amplified, you could hear it if it was a band, you know, like a mariachi band or whatever. It could be out there, not amplified, but still get pretty loud. And I would like to see a restriction of no outdoor music, period, and no speakers out there, period. Let's see, and then also the hours weren't mentioned, of the hours of operation of a restaurant. People go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock usually, and this restaurant, especially with the ones that sell alcohol, are open later. And I would like to see that at least the outside seating be limited to 9 p.m. and the restaurant maybe 10 or 11, maybe 11 on the weekends. I understand if it's a restaurant they can't close too early, but I'm also concerned about the lights not being too high and actually being able to, shine over the yards. The water issue is continuing, and I'm thinking with a wall or barrier or fence there, the water is gonna, if it's over just the north side, the water would come around the edges like it would serve as a dam, and the water would because the slope of the land, my yard, it comes down, so it would just gush into my cul-de-sac there in front of my house and into my yard like a waterfall.
Good time, is that?
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have another one?
Yes.
Carolyn Morgan, address is 317 North 8th, right on the west
I'm
side.
sorry, repeat your name, please.
Carolyn Morgan.
Thank you.
And since people live on the west side, it would be nice to also have the same fence that goes around the back because we have the very same issues. I don't know why we would get a wood fence and then there would be the mason on the back. And I worry about the lights because there'd be no privacy in the yard if there's bright lights all the time. And the water, that's always a problem. And that's the main things. That's the main things right now anyway. But we do, you know, people live there, so.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
could we ask the last applicant on the site plan where her properties is at on the west line?
Miss Morgan, can you come back and tell us?
Off of page 12, probably, of Fiddler Acres.
It's in the corner, you say it's the left,
The far left on the illustration.
far left on the illustration.
Look,
There's three houses.
No.
It's the one farthest north.
farthest north.
Furthest north. Where the.
So the northwest corner then.
And do you live in that home?
No, not right now. We have lived there and we're going to live there again, but right now friends live there. So it is, you know, it's a family home.
Thank you.
Linda Whitewater. I live at 706 East C Street and have since the 80s. Ron and I have worked very hard to pay off this mortgage. And I am all for progress. But the B Street is a 2-lane narrow road with a 4-way stop. You got Riverwalk, you got the traffic coming off the bridge, Lily's. How much more do you think a 4-way stop on a narrow 2-lane road can handle? When the Jenks kids come up from school at 4 o'clock, I don't dare make an appointment with the doctor or anything of importance because I know I can't get out. So, I mean, I want y'all to really visualize or drive down it and see how narrow that road is. And there's no way you can expand it. Louis, you know, no, I'm totally against it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak?
No.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will close the floor for general comments, and we'll give the applicant an opportunity to come back and respond to the concerns that have been brought up.
Chairman, members of the commission, Robert Bell. I noted some of this down. I think we're kind of at a cross on the masonry versus wood fence a little bit. I don't think the masonry fence provides any greater amplification of sound or absorption of sound And I think that the masonry fence would have to be smaller in nature or smaller in height, because the more you take it up, the more you got to get into the ground. And dig its foundation there to be sustainable. And so you're not going to get that out full effect that you would if you put in a solid 8-foot fence, and we'll even put a cap on top of it at that point. There's not a lot of money difference here we're talking about.
Maybe there is a better compromise where there's at least, you go up 3 feet or 4 feet with masonry and then top it off with wood to get to that 8 feet.
If we're trying to preserve the wood for a longer period of time, just to,
I really think it does help with sound.
so and
Mr. Fellow, I think it adds with exactly what's been discussed. Things like any type of rodent problem that might get through. It's going to help with lights from cars when they're driving in the parking lot, not coming through the wood. The wood is susceptible to being destroyed quicker than the masonry is. That's we all understand that, and because of that, it is not as it doesn't provide as good of a barrier for these residents for their homes. They moved into homes when this piece of property was a home. We all understand that there are changes in progress in this area right here, but we have to do it in a way that makes certain we are protecting these residents as much as possible. And so an 8-foot masonry fence seems to be a small.
I don't think you can do an 8-foot masonry. I'm not proposing. We can do a 3-foot foundation, like Churchill perimeter fence on the outside where it has masonry coming up and wood, so the wood can get up to an 8-foot level. At that point, I don't have a problem. But if we build up a wall where we have to dig into the foundation, now we're and to where you have to put a 12-foot or an 8-foot masonry fence completely across the north line, we're going to kill every tree out there that's in place. And I don't have a problem on the north line doing a 3 or 4 foot masonry requirement with the wood fence on top of it. But I just don't think that it's been thought through what a 6 foot, the difference between a 6-foot masonry requirement fence or if you try to make it 8 foot. I think it even gets worse because of the building permit requirements related to the building permit, and that's a foundational wall at that point. So I just know that there's problems related to a masonry fence that I don't think we're going to spend a lot of money on. We're not going to get a lot of benefit out of. Related to that, I'd rather put the money that we save on that into evergreen trees along the north line and make them taller at some point, or have a height requirement to start with, versus requiring them to build something on there that because of the building code requirements for what we're talking about building is detrimental to the fence, to the neighborhood, to the property. But I don't have a problem with building a 4-foot high concrete or a 3 foot high masonry fence, and then put the rest of the fence, our fence, on top of that. At that point, that something in that regards, that could even make it, if we went 3 foot of concrete and a 6 foot fence on top of that, that now we're at 9 feet instead of 8, that may be beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
The other ones?
The noise that everybody's talking about noise, but they're saying they didn't hear Louis, and once the buildings were taken down out there, then they could hear Louis over in that area. So the noise from the restaurant is not going to be an issue. All the activity that is outside is on the west or on the east side of this building, and that's a 20-foot strip by 15 feet wide at that point. That and the noise from that goes back into the building or goes towards Riverwalk. This building that we're proposing is going to block the noise the same way that the houses did before when they were there. So getting the building back up on that property will help regulate the noise that comes from Louis. The noise that's not regulated is the outdoor facilities associated with Riverwalk Crossing, and there's been complaints on that to the city for years and years at that point. This proposal is going to help that in the long run, because we're talking about building a fence along the north line that wasn't there before. That was never blocked off this way before. So we're creating a scenario that will help them with their existing development, and I still propose. I don't disagree that our parking lot will create the potential for noise that they can hear, but it's not going to be anything near what they hear when Riverwalk has an open concert that comes right through that open area, right into that property at that point. So
what time does this restaurant close? I can't remember from our last meeting.
Their current hours of operation are from like 10 in the morning to 11 at night. I think that when you talk about the area, Riverwalk has some established hours in their PUD. It changes from Monday through Thursday, and then it's later when Friday, Saturday nights, and then it drops back down on Sunday. And my the business that I think is going to be in there, and I can't talk about that, but they'll close at 11. And the restaurant use is what we're going to get at that location, which is a great use when you consider that the peak times of a restaurant use are opposite of the peak times of the school use. So the traffic on B Street will, when the school's peaking, the restaurant is at a low at that point, and vice versa. So that's a good. Those two uses are good together on the street at that point. So drainage issue. I heard that comment, and we in the plat we're definitely improving the situation by taking the water directly into the detention facility. If we can't exasperate any of that issue, but if we can help that issue by stopping the ability for that water to backtrack into the neighborhoods, then I think that's a smart move for the city and the city engineer to look at.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
I'm trying to be helpful on the fence. I just think that when you build an 8-foot high masonry wall, the what has to be under the ground to support that is astronomical to support the wind loads, and we can get far more greater situation if we go with a 2 or 3 foot masonry or 4 foot masonry and then put fence on top of it at that point.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, any other questions or comments you want to discuss?
I'll make a comment here before we make a motion. Again, just responding back to Mr. Bell, as we've been talking through this, I pulled up some technical specs, and the denser material that's used in fencing, the more noise it stops. Gabion type of masonry stops 60 decibels, whereas typical wood fencing is 25 decibels. And this is a very issue that the residents went through when the Creek Expressway went through, which is why we put walls up along the expressway. And there are some solutions that are out there, some contemporary solutions that would resolve your concerns about the weight. Simtech has got some types of masonry solutions that are actually done in panels, similar to where we have accepted hardy board as masonry on construction for external siding. So there are a number of solutions out there that would not create a problem on the 8-foot construction. The other thing you could potentially do is you could look at maybe even a berm along the base. So there are some solutions there that I think would resolve both the need for masonry without the necessity of what you're concerned with foundation or footings.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of follow up on that, and from my perspective, I think the restaurant idea fits this area. It provides an opening as the vision lays out, and I understand that, and I in favor of that type of progress and that goal. But I think if we're going to do it, we have to have these additional concessions, and I think that it has to begin with the 8-foot masonry fence. I understand the idea that parking lot is already, the building being as far away from them as possible is going to help. But my home backs to 5 Oaks, and it's across a field from their parking lot, and so we're still a couple hundred yards away. And at night, if we're in our backyard, after an event, you hear people talking in the parking lot. Does it bother us that much? No, but it's there, and it does create noise, and it does create bother, and it is a bit of an invasion of the privacy of these individuals who have lived in this home, or in these homes and in this area for a long time. And so I think it's important that we get that additional privacy for them. I think it solves a number of issues and concerns that I have, and I think it makes that to me gives us the best of both worlds. We're able to get this development on this piece of property. I think it does solve some of their concerns. I agree with Mr. Bell. It's going to help with their drainage, because they're going to be required to get this drainage, away from these homes, to the best that they can. I think it helps with some of the noise by getting this fence up that exists, and it helps with the development of the area. They've done I think Mr. Bell's done an excellent job of trying to move the traffic and alleviate the traffic on B Street. I think it's a well thought out plan. I just think it needs to add this additional step. I did also want to comment or ask others. First of all, does the no amplified music include no speakers? I guess that's number one. And does no amplified music mean no outdoor music of any kind? So I mean, could somebody have an acoustic music there? And I guess those are the two questions that I have about the no amplified sound.
Commissioner, from a staff perspective, no amplified sound does mean no amplifier. So you could not have anything electric or bullhorn, etc. I would say that it does allow for music if it is not amplified. So I believe if it says no amplification, it just means no amplified sound, but I could go out with an acoustic and perform. That's my understanding, and that is how I would interpret it if someone came to me after this was approved as it is written.
Okay, so that would even mean even if somebody's playing an acoustic guitar, there's no, they can't be singing into a microphone of some sort that's amplifying their voice either, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Anyone else?
I apologize, Madam Chair, just a comment on that as well. I know that there's at least some discussion with some counselors regarding other sound issues that we've got around the city. And I know that we have dealt with hours of operation, noise, and lighting in other PUDs. And I would be curious if we can propose a limitation on hours of operation for outside music, not for seating, but to put a restriction that music, non-amplified music, could be limited up to 9 p.m. In the PUD. That would be a question. Second question that I'd kind of like to throw out to Commissioner Davis and to Marseille would be going back to the actual plat itself. I just have kind of a question in my mind, and not to throw to Mr. Bella a curveball here, but would the plat be better soundproofed if the building were actually to the far north side of the lot, to where you've got, just minimal operating space between the building and then whatever we do in the way of masonry, so that the parking is actually on the south side? Just a question.
I think aesthetically that it no longer feels like that quaint downtown establishment. It feels more like a 1970s strip mall feeling when you put that sea of parking up front and you push the building back, and I don't think that's really the look that you want in your downtown. From a sound, I think that I would suggest on the screening, because council was very adamant that the public meet with the applicant, and I can even be a part of that meeting and have that conversation and come to some consensus before the city council hearing on what is acceptable. And noting that something more than an 8-foot wooden fence. 8-foot wooden fence is not acceptable. It cannot be the minimum or the maximum standard. We have to go above and beyond. And what is that happy medium?
Can I jump in then real quick? Let me just throw out my 2 cents. I think a fence that is only 4 feet, 3 feet of masonry with wood on top ultimately defeats the purpose of requiring the masonry. This is my opinion, and I'll just say I'm only going to vote to approve today if it includes the 8-foot masonry fence. That's my opinion.
Thank you. That's fine.
Anyone else?
I just echo everyone else's comments. That, the fence, I'm not a technical expert. I was thinking 6 foot do it. 8's better. I don't know about cost. I don't know if there's some possibility, Marseille, for us to come up with a proposal. I know there's more soundproofing fences, so the choices aren't purely wood or masonry. And maybe there's something out there that's more cost effective that could be 8 foot or something like that. I don't want to kick the can down the road. is there a mechanism we could maybe look at fencing options? But I too share everyone's concern that we need some sort of effective fence, and wood doesn't seem to quite cut it. So.
I think when you make your motion, you need to include the direction that you want to go, but you might just try to think outside of the box, because I think you're correct that there might be some other options. We might find that 6 feet, I don't know, Commissioner Brown, how tall a gabion wall was in order to get that sound barrier at 60 decibels. But if a gabion wall was adequate at 6 feet, then maybe that is enough. And I think because we don't know those dynamics, I understand what you're saying. 8 feet is a wall, it's not a fence. That's the height of a full-fledged building. So I get it, and there's pros and cons to all of that, and I think the intent is 100% on target, and that is to protect the neighbors. It is going to develop someday. It is probably never going to be residential, and how can we protect the neighborhood? And I think that I understand, and if you want to say your recommendation is an 8-foot masonry, I'm comfortable with that. And I just know that also that Councilor Lynn had asked that there be some communication, and that the public was a part of that dialogue in the final decision-making process. It can still be your recommendation, but maybe just add that with continued dialogues between the public and council.
Good point.
Can the applicant address this issue one last time?
The applicant's asking to have one more conversation.
As long as it's not redundant of what's already been said, I'll allow it.
Yeah, my only concern is if we do fence, that we don't use that panels, because those masonry panels fall. They don't hold it up. If you're gonna do a fence, and we need to have some solid requirements on the height of the masonry if you're gonna use some wood. I think that's more reliable than going out there and putting in posts with masonry panels.
Okay.
I do that.
So let me make sure I understood. You're saying that no matter, regardless of the height, that masonry panels are not an acceptable option.
No, because I did masonry panels along Peoria, going up from Pine through going up Peoria to 36th Street. Okay. And we lost a number of those panels 3 months later.
Huh.
So essentially, the wording would have to say a non-modular, a permanent wall with a minimal decibel level constructed of some type of masonry then.
And that's really why I stepped back up, because I'd like to pursue the idea, and a lot of you are familiar with the car wash and the wall that we built associated with the backside of the car wash for Mrs. Tinker, and so there was different products associated with that was not necessarily it had to be built like a retaining wall or something that you would see next to the highway at that point. So there may be some options in that regard. And as far as I know, is that we're talking about the north line at this point. On the west line, on the west line from halfway point up was not included in Marseille's.
I'd leave that up to the discretion of the planning commission.
And what I would say is that this, if there's one of those owners that are located on that property, which is the first house on 8th Street, he's looking to do an office development on his property. That's the guy that lives in Little Rock, I think. Because the second house.
Hey, Robert, can we just kind of stick to this wall?
So anything we put up there, if we put up masonry, that's designed to be office and use and not houses. at that point. We offered the 8-foot wall because we thought it was good for the entire area, so.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Are we ready to take each one of these items one by one? May I hear a motion on JZ 2655?
Before we get to a motion, can we clarify, where do the stipulations need to come? Do they need to be in the PUD?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Waiting on a motion.
So essentially, we're starting off on the zoning request.
Yes.
Staff recommends approval of river-oriented commercial zoning only with approval of Planned Unit Development 120.
Right.
Okay, and this is Travis. I'll move approval of JZ 20-655 to rezone to river-oriented commercial from office meeting.
I'll second it, Leon Davis.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. I hear a motion on JZ 654 PUD 120.
I'll make a motion. This is John. I'll make a motion to approve JZ 2654 PUD 120, subject to provisions that we will have at least 8-foot masonry for soundproofing on the north fence line and on the west fence line to a midpoint extending down to the end of the parking, halfway on the east line. I'm sorry, on the west line, and also ensuring that the hydrology that's completed and stormwater management will move water away from the north end of the property. That shielded lighting is included to minimize light noise in the neighborhood. And no amplified sound.
And John, if I may, do you want to add something to your motion about the trash?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. And that the trash receptacles need to be positioned on the east property line, not to the north.
On the amplified sound, was that at a certain period of time, or are you saying no amplified sound?
No amplified sound outside.
That condition's already there.
It's already in there? Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes?
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. May I hear a motion on ROW UEC 20-74 for the utility easement closure?
This is Travis Fulkerson. I'll move approval of ROW-UEC 20-74, the utility easement closure.
I'll second, Craig Bowman.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes?
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Last one is, do I hear a motion for the request for the approval of the preliminary plat?
And Travis Fulkerson, I'll move approval of the preliminary plat for Fiddler Acre.
I'll second it to Greg Bowman.
Travis Fulkerson,
Yes.
John Brown,
Yes.
Scott West,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Craig Bowman,
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Minden.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. This was very well handled and very well done. Other business we have, Marcia, you want to give us an update on Horizon?
Well, I shot an email out to you all late this afternoon when I probably should have been preparing for tonight instead, but I felt a little scattered by the time I walked in because I was trying to do too much. But I submitted chapters 1 through 4 for review by the Citizen Advisory Committee and for review by the City Council and Planning Commission. Those chapters, the only thing I would add is take the exhibits with a grain of salt. They're very, very, very close, but I'll give you an example on the existing land use. We've asked them to go back in and add the planned unit development as a layer on those maps, so there'll be a few tweaks on that. The actual text should be pretty close. Took a lot of time, many hours was spent getting to this point. I know that the public met, and they were with the consultants. So yeah, chapters 1 through 4, then we'll have a conversation with the Citizens Advisory Committee and the consultants, and then I will plan to release, and there's a date in that email and in that memo. There's another date where you'll receive chapters 5 through 8, I believe, and then the final chapter will be 9 through 11 for your review. And please give me a call, send me a text if you have any questions, have any concerns or anything. I'm available to talk about it and want to talk about it and excited to get it approved.
Good to see these. If I can ask, how long are we going to have to review these?
The first 4 chapters, you have almost 2 full weeks. And part of that is because we did an extensive review of some of the exhibits in the following chapters, and I don't think that they'll be ready for release until I got to give the consultants plenty of time to get those corrected. And because of that, you get more time on the first chapters 1 through 4, and then after that, 5 through 8, I think gives you about 6 business days and 1 full weekend. If you all really feel strongly that you don't mind delaying the approval because you really want to spend more time looking at it, that's definitely a discussion that we can have. The way that it's scheduled, I have it coming to Planning Commission, and this is really pending consultant schedule. I know they had 1 date available in June. I haven't talked to them about July, but we have it currently, the last Planning Commission in July is when we would bring it to Planning Commission for recommendation, and then taking it to council the first week of August for approval. The contract said that it would be done midsummer. So it's really a matter, they have provided the information, we just have been a little bit challenged getting the corrections back to them, etc. I should say comments back to them. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I might say I'm excited to dig into it. I know there's been a ton of work that's gone into it. I personally obviously haven't seen anything yet. So, let's keep it moving, but I just want to make sure we give it the attention that it needs. Maybe that can be done, with the schedule you just outlined, but if this commission feels like it needs more time, I think we should take it because this is going to be a multi-year plan that will be in place. But thank you.
I think that we can accommodate that. These are just proposed timelines, and we can certainly make those changes accordingly.
Okay, any other updates for us, Marseille?
I think that is it. We were happy to have the city hall open to the public for comment. I think that was really beneficial for the public. It was good for me to kind of meet some of the citizens of this community, and at some point maybe I'll get to meet you guys too.
When can we come back?
Really, we want to come back too.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. I will let the city manager know. I know that they don't plan to open it even for the next meeting. I'm pretty sure, not yet. So maybe soon. When do we have phase 3 open? Do y'all remember when the governor's opening?
In Tulsa, phase 3.
Oh, I totally missed it.
Phase 3 up in June 1st, I think. So.
There we go. I didn't even notice.
We're already in it,
How
but
about
there's no end in sight on phase 3 right now.
Okay. So I definitely will continue to keep the council chambers open for the public. I think that it's more convenient and it's definitely a little bit easier.
Commissioner West has had a no look in his eye all night.
He likes to mow the lawn and come flying in at the last minute.
Haven't seen his face tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, second, I guess.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.